Ciao, amici. How's everybody doing today? We're going to do a little bit about photo editing on the iPhone. It's really incredibly powerful thing you can do with just a simple iPhone, built-in apps, or a couple of free apps that you can download as well. To get started, we're going to just go into the photo app, normal, where you view your photos. We'll get rid of that one, and we're going to go, and I'm going to search out one. Well, I guess to get started, let's go through one of the most powerful things that you kind of get to learn on any photography is a histogram, or kind of understanding how light in photos work. And just to go quickly through this, this is a representation from left to right on where the tone or the blacks and the whites of the image are. And so it's always this kind of a bell curve. You know, sometimes it'll be broken up, sometimes it'll be shifted to one side or the other. And so think of it as things on the left are the darkest things on the image, and things on the right are the brightest things in the image. And in general, that is related like on a scale of 0 to 255 digitally. And so you have very dark, very light. And so there are mixes within those. And so your, like it says here, your tonal range is the bulk of your photo. Very few photos will spread out much farther than this tonal range that you see here, but they might go from one side to the other. This gets really important as we start adjusting our photos to kind of understand this grouping, and we can't spread this out unnaturally or will cause weird things. If all of a sudden we try to make the things that are the darkest, which would be, you know, down here at the bottom of the hill, and we start to push them too far to the left without moving everything else to the left, it can kind of get the photo can get a little bit weird, and we'll probably see that a little bit later. This same image you might see in different representations on digital cameras. It's not on your iPhone regular app, but on some of the pay apps like Camera Plus and Camera Pro, it is one of the things that you can bring up and see. And it gives you an idea of where things are, to where you definitely don't want things way over here, and to where your histogram is really focused on the right. All right, with that said, we're going to get into some actual editing, and we'll see that. Let me scroll and find my favorite subject for photography. This is Cowboy Kitty. If you don't know him, he owns the Botanic Garden here at Oklahoma State University. And he's often prowling around there and making sure that everybody's working properly. This shot of Cowboy I took with the portrait mode on the iPhone. So if you look here up at the top left, whenever I click on the photo, it says portrait. And so if we go up to the top right and edit that photograph, it brings up this. I'm sure you are familiar with this. Up at the top right again, there is an auto correct. That's a little magic wand to kind of magically fix the image. Sometimes it's not bad like that. Enhance it a little bit, not bad, but not quite what I wanted to do. If you look at the bottom of the photo, you see the little icon like you would whenever you were taking the portrait. And like I said before in the photo section, you can still go in and change all of those effects in a post setting. So you still have all of those controls, and so you don't have to worry about necessarily taking the photo with that setting on. You can go in and change it once you take the photo and then take it into the Photos app. To go at the bottom, we can cancel anything that we've done, and it won't affect the image. We can go in and we can crop. And so you want to try to keep it the same ratio. I'm going to reset that. You can tell it what ratio you want. So this is nice if you are doing something for like Instagram, and you want that square, you can then adjust in the square. And then you can also straighten the image, which is really nice because sometimes you're just a little bit off and it looks strange because everybody's leaning in a photo. And so it will adjust and enlarge the photo so that there's not any black bars or anything whenever you're doing that. I'm just going to leave Cowboy Kitty like he is and go back and cancel, discard the changes, and then edit again. The second little icon, which is the 3 circles, which is usually kind of international for filters, lets you apply some different filters. And so with this image, you can give it some different looks. And so, some of them are kind of cool, the dramatic, and then, of course you love the black and white. Kind of always gives it, especially some of the more dramatic black and whites, gives it a neat look. And so those are really nice, especially if the image was already kind of nice looking or needed that, but this image is washed out to me. And so then we're going to go on the next button, the controls button, and we're going to edit. Whenever you're editing, if you're just wanting to make it black and white, you can click on black and white, and then you can adjust how you want to change the color, or you can even go into individual controls on the black and white. And so this allows you to adjust the intensity, the neutral tone, where that middle part of the histogram is, and then give it some, spread out the tone with tone, and then grain will kind of give it more of a film look, if you wanted to do that. So it increases or adds in this grain that otherwise would not be there in the image. Like I said, if you're wanting that black and white look, that is the first place you go. I'm going to cancel again, discard changes, go back into edit, and then we're going to actually clean it up as a color photograph. Whenever you're doing a color photograph, if the color's off, don't worry about it first. First thing that you want to do is adjust the light of the color or light of the photograph, because you change the color and adjust the color after the tone or that the lights and the darks are fixed, because otherwise you can really throw off the lights and the darks. If you go first the color, and then you'll have to go back to color after you adjust the lights and the darks, because the two kind of interplay. And so the first one that you want to adjust is the lights and the darks. And so once again, you've got like these general controls that will kind of guess, like if you want it lighter or darker, which can be really quick, powerful, but we're going to go a little bit deeper in here. And so we want to enlarge the controls, and we've got these 7 different controls on here. Brilliance, exposure, highlights, shadows, brightness, contrast, and black point. The brilliance and exposure are very similar but different. Exposure is literally like exposure on the camera. You are overexposing, like basically the same as if you left the shutter open longer. So you're just making everything brighter or everything darker. It's nice to be able to do. It works on some photos, but one that can be a little bit different is brilliance. And brilliance affects everything but the lights. And so it kind of skews what it adjusts on that left side of the histogram towards the darks, and it leaves the right side of the histogram or the brights in the image alone. And so it's basically going to make it brighter without making the things that are already bright enough bright. And so we can kind of bring out this photo and basically make it a brighter day without making the things that were, like I said, already well exposed, overexposed. And so brilliance a lot of times is a more powerful tool to increase the brightness of an image than is exposure. Then we have highlights and shadows, and those are basically in that, think of the histogram, you were either going to affect the bright parts or the dark parts. And on these, most of the time, you're wanting to bring the bright parts down and the dark parts up or brighter. And so we can go in, and on this one, we can bring down, see how the brightest images are kind of coming down and you're getting a little bit more contrast, a little darker, kind of get to his face. We can do the opposite, but then it starts washing out. And so most of the time, I will tell you that you're going to be trying to bring your highlights down. With that said, if something is really overexposed, you're not going to really be able to do a good job of bringing down something that's just white. If it is 255, like we saw on the screen, if it is all white, there's not much you can do at that point. And so you just sometimes have to just leave it white. If you start really trying to overcompensate with the highlights, it then just turns kind of brown and muddy or gray, and it looks unnatural. So sometimes white just has to be white. And then the shadows can be really nice, to where you can go in and in the old photography, we used to talk about dense negatives. And so a lot of times in those darker areas, you can still have a lot of detail that you can pull out if you want that, by increasing the brightness or the exposure in that area. Or if you just want a little bit more contrast, then you can kind of pop those darks down like we did here. All right. So we've got that adjusted. Then we've got contrast. Contrast is nice. It basically, it pulls apart that histogram towards the edges and makes things either more bright or more dark, depending on where they are on that histogram. But how I think a better way to do it is through the black point. And so we don't mess with the histogram, because like I said, if you stretch out that histogram, a lot of times then the photo starts looking unnatural. It's either got too much contrast in it, or it just starts looking flat or weird, because it's not logical, to where the light that exists in this image overall was right, because that's the light that was in there. It just wasn't necessarily the light that we wanted, the mix. And so if we adjust the black point, what we're going to do is that we're going to take that curve, or that histogram mix of lights and darks as they exist right now, as we've made the fine tuning on them. And then we're going to scoot them one way or the other. And so we're going to move that black point and make it a little brighter, or we're going to make it a little darker. And so now by scooting it to the right, we've literally moved that whole histogram, kind of skirted it over there towards the right, so that everything is a little bit darker. There's a little bit more contrast, but everything is still intact the way it was. And so I think you can see here how, this photo now has more life to it. It looks more logical, like it's real, as opposed to the more washed out look that was before. Now we want to go in and we want to play with the color, because now that we've got the image and the lights and darks all set, then we can go in and we can once again mess with the just color overall. But you know me, I like to mess more detail. And so within the color settings, you have saturation, contrast, and cast. Saturation will just increase the amount of color. And so everything is turned up. And so we can kind of hit that a little bit, gives him a little bit more color. And then we can go in and hit contrast. And so that's going to do kind of the same thing that contrast on lights and darks will do, but it's going to do it with color. And so it's going to kind of, the things that are dark, if we will add more color to, if we go take it over here to the left, if we go the opposite direction, it'll add more color into the things that are lighter. And so it gives us a little bit of control to once again kind of add some more color to his fur, because it's a little darker. And then if you see in the background, the greens are kind of getting more color in them as we go, to where this way the bricks are getting a little bit more color because they're a little brighter, and the more light parts of Cowboy Kitty. And so it's a way to add contrast through color. And finally, the cast is a way to adjust the overall color of the image. And so we want to be pretty careful with this, because normally there would be a little bit more controls on color, like if you have been used to Photoshop, but we can kind of make it warmer if we take it over here towards the right, or cooler if we take it to the left. We'll warm it up a little bit, because he's a pretty orange cat and it was a gray day, and so we give him the overall image a little bit more warmth. All right, and then we're kind of finished with this, and so that photo looks quite a bit different than the ones that we had before. We could even go in just to see, well, one more thing before we go. I don't know, a lot of people don't realize that you can also mark up a photo within iPhoto. And so if you want, you've got different types of things. You've got, like a big marker, you've got a pencil, an eraser. And so you can then change the color of what you want to write. And then you can just write on the screen. Cowboy Kitty. All right. And you can either undo that, or if there was a particular part, if you click on your tool again, you can even use the eraser and then go in and erase just part of it. It's kind of fun to add to photos, especially for social media stuff. And then I'm just going to go in and keep hitting. I'll hit cancel and go back to that. Now let's see, before we go on, the difference between this image that we've worked on here, and then I'm going to revert it to the original. And then we'll see, wow, big difference. You may like this image because it is wash out, and sometimes you want that. But if you want to enhance, just right here within the Photos app, you can do quite a bit of stuff. Now, if you want to get a little bit more advanced, then you can go into Lightroom. Lightroom does a lot of nice things. The tools sometimes are differently named, and so that's one thing that you got to watch out for. Like if you go into the light in the image, they don't have black point. They kind of do it through a mixture of exposure and contrast. Difference, if you're used to Photoshop, you can actually use curves within Lightroom, which is nice because you can kind of get a little bit more control overall. You can really get into the weeds with this, though, and kind of overdo it. If you see up at the top here, we've got a histogram, and that's one thing that they do have within Lightroom that's really nice to be able to use. But one of the main things in Lightroom that I think is really cool is that you can go in and add a watermark. And so you can go in and, where is it? I believe it's in, nope. Well, I'm not going to get that far into it in here, but you can add a watermark to your image, which is really nice. If you are wanting to make sure that anyone's not going to steal your image, you can make it where, like at the bottom of the screen, there'll be photo by on every photo that you kind of send through here. Really wanted to get to one other app, though. Like I said, Lightroom, incredibly powerful. If you've already used Photoshop, I highly recommend downloading and utilizing Lightroom, because it is a fabulous app, and you'll be used to how to make it work by your experience in Photoshop. But this app I just found not long ago, and it kind of blew me away, and it's down here at the bottom right, and it's called Snapseed. I have no idea what Snapseed means or why it's a photo app, but it's by our friends at Google once again, and it's free on the App Store, and it is an incredibly fun, powerful editor with a really cool interface. And so I'm going to launch it, and then we'll go in, and I'm going to open up a photo. We can open up from our device, and then I'll do this photo. This is of a recipe that Barb made the other day. It's a curry with potatoes and cauliflower, and it is quite yummy, even with raisins. And so within the Snapseed app, when we want to edit, you can give it looks. And so it's got some really nice just set looks with this one. Since this scene is kind of very monotonal, it's not giving us a lot of look. If you bring in a portrait in here, you can really add some neat stuff. And so it's got some nice effects that you can add to it. We'll cancel that. But the tools, right here in the middle of the screen on the bottom, if you click on the tools, you can go in and you can tune the image just like we did before. It gives us the histogram down at the bottom left, which is really nice. And then we can go in and we can do the magic wand again at the bottom, like the bottom right middle, or the little hash marks are basically like sliders, and that's their motif for changing things. And so we've got all of these things that we've kind of used to before. We've got brightness, contrast, saturation. Ambience is like the very similar to brilliance, and so that's what they call that. Now to adjust, you slide your finger from the left to the right. And so it doesn't, if you see up at the very top of the screen, it'll tell us, where we are going from, plus 59 or down to negative 23, and that we're adjusting the ambience. So I'm going to go about there. And once again, like you see, it's making darker things brighter, but it's not touching the brighter things. Now, if we want to change to a different tool, we put our finger on the screen, and then we go up and down, and we have access to where we don't have to then, like in the Photos app, it's really clunky. Once you do one tool, then you have to kind of click off of it, click on the main tool button, and then click the tool that you then want to change. To where this one, once you're in one area, like altering the photo with the light, you can go in and it will, just by moving your finger up and down, allow you to go through and pick the next thing, like the warmth. Take a little bit of the warmth out of this, I think. And then we want to go through and let's see what else we can change. We'll go bring up the shadows a little bit. They're a little, there we go. Let's take those darker. And then overall, I'm going to actually change the brightness. Here we are, up to 30. So that image looks all right, looks presentable, but let's see what else we can do to it. At this point, we can cancel all of this. Well, at the top left, we can, if we hold the button down, we can see where it was and where we are now. And so at the top right, we've got this little, like two rectangles, and that allows us to see how we've changed it. And then if we hit the X on the left, then it cancels this. If we hit the check mark on the right, that means, yeah, we want to keep that. All right. Then we can go in and adjust more things. The tools in this, I encourage you to go and download this, because I can't go through all of the tools in here. There are so many cool things that you can do, and so you can just start playing with photos in it. For now, I want to just change the white balance a little bit. And so white balance is tricky. I won't get too deep into it. If you want to know, please ask me on the trip, because I do love talking about white balance, but and light in general. But what the white balance means is that, kind of like that histogram, light is made up of a mix of colors. And so it's light is not just one color. Even like the bluest light that you can think of is not just blue. It has red in it, but just not as much. And so you have to adjust for that. And the camera is generally pretty smart on the auto setting for being able to guess, but not always. Sometimes some things throw off different cameras. And so you have to go in and kind of adjust for that white balance. And so we can go in and we can adjust the tint like we did before, but we can also adjust the temperature. Light is the color of light, or the mix of colors of light is given in degrees of Kelvin. And so once again, I won't geek out on you here, but let me know if you do have any interest in this. And so we basically goes from a red shift to a bluer shift. And so we can go in and once again slide our finger left and right and kind of play with this. I think it's probably pretty good there. It's a brown plate. There's a lot of brown in this image. We'll change the tint maybe a little bit too, see if that helps us. A lot of times, good color correction with these two controls is the temperature and the tint combined really helps, because you can kind of change the temperature, but then sometimes the tint will help you overall as well. And so it's kind of like alchemy. You have to really kind of get in there and mix with it. With this one, if you look at the bottom, we can auto white, but cameras already tried to auto white and it didn't do a very good job, and this probably wouldn't either. And then on the second to the right, there's an eyedropper. If you have something that is white, gray, or black, you can go in and press on this eyedropper and then put it over the screen, and it will adjust the color. Like we've got rice, which is close to white, but not quite. But you can adjust that, and then you can even zoom in on there if you want and move it around. And so see how it's changing? This, like I said, really works if you have that white or black or gray in the image. You can really improve your white balance. But we're going to go back from that and just stay with what we had there. We don't want that. That is one thing that I have found with this app that you got to be really pretty careful on, is that as you are adjusting it, the natural tendency is to swipe the screen to move it. But if you're in a tool, it doesn't like you to do that. If you're zoomed in, the little box at the bottom, the blue box inside of the white box, lets you move around the image by moving that blue box around. And then you pinch to go back to the full image to then go somewhere else. But that's one thing that I like from using Photoshop I've run into. So just if you run into that, just kind of remember that it's a change. You don't press and click on the picture to move it around. You move the blue box. All right, we're going to keep that one. And then we'll go through, I'm not going to go through a lot of these other tools right now, but I will go, drama is one. There's a lot of ways to add filters in this. Drama is one that I really liked. This setting here is drama 2. There's different dramas. I don't know what that really means, but I kind of like drama 2. It really brought out a neat contrast to enhance these the vegetables. So we've got this. It's kind of a cool looking little shot. We might even just real quick go into, I think that's good for now. I want to make this, say, a title slide. And so the few things that you can also do on here are down here at the bottom right, we can do lens blur. And so that allows us to select an area that's, in this case, a circle, although we can go in and change that to stars and what have you with the little thing that looks like a book. I don't know what that motif is. But with this case, we'll give a circle. And if you see what's inside the inner circle here is nicely in focus. And then it starts to blur, and the area between the first circle and the second is the transition zone. And then everything past this outer circle is blurred just a little bit. You can go in and once again, you can change those things, but we're going to keep these settings right now set. And I'm going to go ahead and lock them in. And so now we've got kind of a little bit more shallow depth of field on this, which gives us kind of a cool look there. And then I'm going to add a title. And so where you could mark up in your Photos app, with this, it gives you some text tools. And so we've got down here at the bottom all sorts of cool little text things. You may have seen some of these from the title slides that I've done. I did them in this app. let's do something that, the key about these are make sure that they're readable. And so that is a key combination of, well, we'll do this one. And so we double tap that, and then we change the text to Barb's Curry. I'll make it capital. Barb Curry. And then you got to give an exclamation point because it was really good. Use a different style. All right, so we've got that title. We can put it on different parts of the screen to kind of get it in the right spot. We don't want it to be over the part that is nicely in focus. We want it to be over the blurry part. And then it's good, but it's not quite visible. And so we could go in and we could change the type on here, and or change the words or get a bigger font, adjust that. But I kind of like the way this looks, so I'm going to do something different. I'm going to go up towards the top on the right and use the brush tool. And so if you're used to Photoshop, this is old hat. You can adjust the exposure, the color temperature, the saturation, and then do dodging and burning to adjust this image. And so we can go in and we can dodge and burn. At the very bottom, we can adjust where we want it to go. And I'm going to do a negative, and then we can go up, and I'm going to kind of go behind the barb and do a little bit of a dodge and kind of make it a little darker. That helped a little. I'm going to go back and I'm going to do an exposure. And so I want it to make it a little darker. And so I can go in and kind of make the image a little darker behind there, so then the text stands out a little bit more. And so this is really kind of a cool effect that you can go through and adjust. You can press the little eyeball button on the right and see where you're affecting. And then we could actually go in and we could, if we wanted to go the other way, we could then kind of get rid of some of that. And so we're making the lighter part lighter, and we're making the darker part darker. Ooh, and that looks really bad. I'm going to exit out of all of that and go back. I'm going to do dodge and burn. I want to do negative dodge and burn here to create that, and then go in and do my exposure negative again. And then, so there, we got that. And then to finish it off, we just hit the check mark in the bottom right, and we've now created this kind of cool graphic where if we look back, I'm going to go ahead and on the export on this thing, you can share it just like you normal would to social media. You've got all the same normal sharing opportunities. You can also open it with something else, so you could go in and open it in Lightroom or even open it in your photo app. It really gives you whatever controls you want for what to do with this image. And then you have 3 different kind of save functions. You can save it where you can actually change the photo. You can save it as a copy where you can change it and keep the original too, so that in your photos you'll see 2 copies, one with this edit and one without the edit. Or you can export it and make all of the settings like locked in, and basically you're over saving the image and there'll only be one image there. That really gives you a lot of capabilities. We're going to do save a copy, and so it applies all these filters, and then it will then successfully save it. And we can go in and then look here. I was practicing, and so we've got, this was our original, and then this is what we did to it. And so it's pretty dramatic what you can do with a photo in this. One other thing I want to show you in this app, let me find, I'm going to go in open from device, which is kind of an easier way to find things that are further back. And I'm going to open this image. I'm sorry, but it's an image of me. But it really kind of shows what I want to illustrate. Two things. One that is just one that freaks me out. The head pose will allow you to go in and it will tell where there is a face in the portrait. And so if somebody isn't looking quite the right way, or if they look a little jolly and you want to kind of give them kind of a little bit less, like, chin, or if you want to, kind of alter where they're looking just a little bit, you can actually move their face around, and it kind of freaks me out. You can do settings on this. You can even change their smile. And so if I'm not smiling enough, you can kind of give me a little bit of a smile. Or you can change the focal length so we can actually blur the background a little bit. Or actually, no, this one changes it to where whenever you're closer to a lens, things will warp a little bit because of the natural curve of the lenses inside. And so you can kind of showcase that curve. And then pupil size, which on me, because I'm squinting, you can't see, but you can actually adjust it. It will find out where the pupils are in the person and make their pupils larger. And like I said, pretty wild stuff. And so we'll cancel out of that. And one other thing that this app will do that's really nice is healing. And so if you've used the Photoshop, you're used to the healing brush. What the healing brush is basically it samples things around an area. Oh, once again, you got to be careful. I keep wanting to touch the screen. You got to move that blue box around. So I have this little mole here on my face. I can go in and I can touch that mole and it paints over it, and then it samples around it and it removes it. I also have some wrinkles up there because I'm squinting, and so the size will adjust as you zoom in or zoom out. And so I'm going to kind of paint this over here, and then you can kind of make some more changes, and then I'm going to get a kind of a bigger match, and then now I don't have those wrinkles anymore. You can get in the weeds in this if you try to do too much, or if you get too close to areas like in my glasses, all of a sudden it kind of loses it. And so you can kind of experiment with that, but I don't remember the name of the old story of, the morality tale of the doctor that, had problems with his wife's birthmark, but it does give you the capability of kind of touching up a photo, like I said, on your phone. So I'm going to cancel that and just encourage you to play with this app. If you have any questions about it, let me know. But it's free, and I know we all want to hate Google because they're so big, but dadgummit, they make really good apps. So Snapseed is the name of it, and it's on the App Store. All right, that pretty much sums up some of the basics of editing. There's a lot more, and if you get in there and you get confused or just need a little help, like getting started or getting past a point, feel free to contact me. Either mention a question on the GroupMe, or email me, or text me, or we're going to be in an airport for quite a long time, so I will be there, willing and able and wanting something to do. So hit me up with questions or things about the apps, about your cameras, anything you want. I am your traveling personal photo guy. I will, over the weekend, put together a little bit about some video tips, because that was one of the things that folks were asking about. Most of the video stuff, first of all, is the photo stuff is the same as the video stuff, but there are a couple other new things that we'll cover. And be sure to do a blog post this weekend about getting ready for the trip. Until Monday morning, bright and early, I will see you later. And any questions, group me. Thanks a lot. Ciao.